So, good evening. Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the conversation from the trenches. And I have with me today Pearl Panthaki, who is a learning leader, a transformational leadership coach, a wellness coach, and somebody who is a very integral part of the Dragonflies Everywhere ecosystem. I can, if I had to introduce Pearl, I would probably need a good 20 minutes, which would eat into all our lifetime. But let me just wrap it up by saying Pearl's an incredible leader. She's extremely passionate about diversity, equity, and inclusion. She works extensively on women's leadership programs, and she's a facilitator who loves dealing with audiences on scale. So, welcome, Pearl.
Thank you, Reka. It's lovely to be back.
So do you want to share a little bit about yourself with the audience or anyone who's watching? A quick.
I think you've done a great job, but I think just to add, very passionate about women leadership, very passionate about coaching, and really everything I do is trying to make a difference and add value to someone's life. So hopefully someone watching this will be inspired.
Absolutely. And today, Pearl and I are going to be talking about a conversation that is not very common. I say it's not common because I've done my homework, I've researched it, and I did not find very many reference points. We're going to be talking about self love in the context of the workplace and why women need to be intentional about self love in the workplace to be successful in their careers, or even if you don't want to be successful in your career, just to perform better at work. Now, the reason we are having this conversation is because Paul and I talk about this a lot offline, and one of the things that we always dial back to is the fact that people talk about self-love in terms of the physical, the body, and it's talked about in the context of self-care, which is only one small dimension of self-love. Self-love is a huge journey by itself. It is something that we have to commit to, and it runs far, far deeper than just self-care. So, we're going to find out a little more about self love, and we are going to see why it is so important for us to be talking about self love in the workspace, why we should be intentional about our self love practices and rituals, and even just our approach to it in the workspace. So, Paul, let's kind of dive right in. And I'm going to start off by just recapping what I said, that self-love has become such a buzzword, and it's mostly focused on women, right? The hype around self-love and self-acceptance has maybe gone up many times over ever since the pandemic started. But as I mentioned, most of the conversations about self love is really about self care, and to a lesser extent about a certain amount of personal care, like, you're resting, your burnout, and stuff like that. We never talk about self love in the context of workspace, or in the context of careers, or in the context of even women's leadership. Do you think, what's your take on self love in the context of work? Do you think it's important? And why do you think that it is important or not important, depending on what you think?
Yeah, no, great. Great point, Reka. And I have to confess, I've never heard the term self-love in the workplace. It almost sounds a bit woo-woo, doesn't it? I'm just trying to imagine self-love. But, I think at work, what do people do? There's so much focus on tasks, deliverables, deadlines. And the whole idea, I think, about a journey of self discovery is how do we, as women, focus on becoming who we truly are? How do we bring about our authentic self without feeling guilty? And for women to unravel what is their true calling, what is their agency that will help them lead
Mm,
more fulfilling lives.
yeah,
And, I really feel organizations, when we talk about women leadership,
yeah,
need to introduce this concept at a very early stage in the career.
yeah.
Usually it's done when someone's had about 15, 20 years work experience. By that
Hmm.
time, they're set in their ways. But I think if the idea of self-love, self-worth, self-respect can be brought in much earlier, then it just helps women to flourish and grow in their career automatically, I feel. But yes, self-love, not a term I've heard in the workplace, and should be there much more, I think.
I think it's very interesting you point out the organizational aspect because I think ever since the pandemic started, we've heard a lot about stress relieving, relieving your
Yes.
stress. We've heard about mindfulness. We've heard about everything other than self-love, and all of
Yeah,
these are components that promote your self-love, that allows you to really
absolutely.
connect back to yourself. But as you said, we shy away from talking about self love at the workspace. And I really wonder whether it has got to do with the fact that we associate self love with women than with people.
Hmm.
You know,
Yeah.
I'm, won- I'm wondering if that's the barrier because generally a lot of conversations that concern women are not easily loved into the mainstream.
Yeah, no, very true. And I think also when we think about women in the workplace, I
Yeah.
think women have to first and foremost, they have to love themselves. And I think they have to learn how to stand in their power, because each woman has power, and have a clear intention of, where do I see my life?
Yeah.
A lot of people in the workplace think of a career as going up the ladder.
Yes.
But actually, a career could be just as successful as maybe taking a lateral step, maybe changing a complete different direction. I
Yeah.
did that. I changed the course of my career after a couple of years. And I realized I loved what I did, but it wasn't my true calling. And I made the change to switch, which so glad I did that. And when we talk about finding what you love, finding what you do, I think really we're coining this term purpose. And again, it's another term which is, you hear and read about it everywhere, but a company has a clear vision,
Yeah.
right? But what about people?
Right.
How do you know your purpose?
Right.
How do you discover your purpose? And once you discover it, how
Yeah.
do you align it to the organization's purpose? And this then helps you to make decisions that work for you. So having that clarity of where you want to navigate your life, your passions
Hmm.
within the company's vision.
Yeah.
And I've done a lot of work on purpose. I do a lot of work at purpose also at work. And I think it also boils down to your values.
Yes.
Again,
Yeah.
companies have values, families have values, societies have values. And for many of us, we take our values based on where we've brought up,
Right.
uh, you know, but for each one of us to think, what are my values? What is true to me?
Yeah.
And how do I navigate that through an organization? And sometimes you may have to decide, is this the right place for me? So when we talk about a work culture, is that the right culture for you?
Mhm.
I know after I graduated from college, I had worked for a startup,
Mhm.
and it was exciting because I was traveling around first class and stayed in five-star hotels, but the
Mhm.
culture was terrible. The
Mhm.
owner of the company would swear all the time. He would put people down, and every day
Mhm.
I'd go to work feeling tense. So
Yeah.
I chose that this is not the kind of company I want to be in. So I left.
Right. Absolutely. That's a very important point you make about, knowing your purpose, knowing your values, knowing if there's a fit
Yeah,
between your values, your purpose with the company's values and purpose, and whether there's a cultural fit.
yeah,
And it actually calls for us women because women play multiple roles in their life, and it's
absolutely.
really important that the fit exists with your workspace because you're spending a good 8-10 hours of your life involved in that aspect. There's no way
Yeah,
you're separating it out, right?
yeah,
but
yeah,
but I want to go back and I just want us to kind of set a little context here. Since this is a very new conversation and we don't have very many reference points, how
yeah.
would you define self-love in the context of work, in the context of careers? I would love to know what you think.
Great question. So, I mean, there's many different things, but a couple of things that come to my mind. One is, uh, what does success mean to you?
Yeah.
And I think defining that success and for me, success at the moment is having a work-life harmony.
Right.
Now, that sounds very easy, but I
Yeah.
actually have to intentionally do
Yes.
that
Yes.
and say, this is time for work, this is time for exercise, this is time for mindfulness, this is time to spend time for myself. And then I would also say, going back to owning ourselves and not rejecting ourselves. So when we say self love, owning every aspect, our thoughts, our actions,
Mhm.
our behavior.
Mm.
And, we tend to give a lot of emphasis on external, how people perceive us.
Yes.
But I think owning our choices
Hmm.
and consequences. I'll say that
Right.
again, owning our choices and the consequences. So, for example,
Yeah.
making a choice to speak up in a meeting. That's a
Yes.
choice. Not easy for everyone as well to do
Yeah.
that.
Mm.
And why don't women feel comfortable speaking up?
Mm. Mm.
Fear of rejection, fear
Yes.
of what others may say, how would it look? But if you own your choice, then
Yeah.
if something doesn't work out, it's a learning. So that's
Absolutely.
your consequence. And I think when we can align it that I have a choice in this,
Yeah.
and if I make a mistake, I
Yeah.
will learn. Because
Yeah.
there's no such thing as failure, only learning.
Absolutely. What you talk about self accepting all parts of us is such a critical aspect of self love. And while I was preparing for our conversation, I did do a little bit of homework, and I was very intrigued to find in a psychology article
Mm,
that a psychologist had actually broken down self love into four components, which was self awareness, self worth, self esteem, and self care. And now, when
yeah,
I listen to what you're saying about really accepting all parts of ourselves and then making choices
yeah,
that support what we want, I can very clearly see why we need to make space for self awareness. Why
yeah,
do we need to be very aware of our self esteem? How do we need to work on our self worth and also take care of ourselves? Right.
yeah, yeah.
So let's push this conversation a little further, and what I would love to know more about is how can being intentional about self love help women do perform better at work, say perform better at work in their day to day work, and in the long term achieve success. What comes to your mind?
Yeah, I know that's a great question. I think this word, I love this word, intentional.
Yes.
I think that says it all. I think being intentional in every way, in your thoughts, in your actions, in your behavior, your self-fulfillment.
Hmm.
And I think again, when I use that word, women have power.
Yeah.
I think a lot of the time we underestimate how much power we actually have. We limit ourselves.
Yes.
And when we can tap into that power,
Yes.
the world is our oyster. But it's a journey though. And and we've spoken about this so many times, we've had many guest speakers in here, how the way we've been brought up, we've had a
Yes.
lot of conditioning.
Yes.
We have to, sometimes we're not even aware. So I think the first step is self-awareness.
Yes.
And that means when you think about your life moving forward, how do
Yes.
you work inward? And I
Right.
honestly believe that self-awareness, uh, I think you need to do it with someone, either a coach, a mentor, someone you trust, someone
Yes.
who challenges you.
Yeah.
Because sometimes there are certain boundaries that we impose on ourselves, but to
Yeah.
go beyond those boundaries.
Yeah.
And, I've learned a lot also through traveling.
Yeah.
For me, traveling is the PhD to life. When you're out of your comfort zone,
Hmm.
you get to learn about yourself. You get to learn that there is so much more to you. And it's so exciting. And
Yeah.
when we talk about self respect, it's again setting those boundaries of how do you choose to respond to a situation, because the way you respond, you have a choice. And let me give you an example of this. I had a situation at work a while back where I was told something and it didn't resonate well with me. So I could feel my body getting tense, I could feel myself feeling a bit upset, but
Yeah.
I chose not to react. I then came home. and I pondered over it. I know I also called you, vented out a little bit. Um, and then I said, no, I have a choice in how I
Yes,
want to respond. I will not tolerate the way this person spoke to me.
absolutely.
And then in a few days, I had a dialogue with this person.
Hmm.
So I stood up for myself.
Yeah,
And that made me feel so empowered. And I think a lot of the time we fear, oh, I can't do it. I shouldn't do it. How will I look? But if you take those micro steps
yeah,
and challenge someone, and, that fear of conflict, it's
yeah,
such a negative word, conflict, but there's also something called healthy conflict,
yeah,
where
yeah,
you're exchanging dialogues, perspectives, where there's respect, dignity, but you're
yeah.
just exchanging views. And I still get times where I don't speak up, but I'm on a journey like everyone else.
Right. Three things that about what you've said stand out to me. One, the fact that why it's beneficial to work with a coach or a mentor and be challenged, because a lot of
Yeah,
times we have blind spots. And,
absolutely.
as women, what we are taught is to edit ourselves. We are
Yes,
taught to be so externally referenced and then to edit
totally.
parts of ourselves which is not maybe acceptable, and that when that's your default mode, you may not even know that you're editing
Not at
yourself.
all. Not at all.
You'll feel the discomfort, as you rightly pointed out.
Yes,
In that situation, you feel the discomfort in your body, you can feel the discomfort emotionally, but you
yep,
don't realize that you have actually moved away from the integrity of yourself, and that's
exactly.
the real challenge with side of you, right? I think the second thing that's standing out for me in what you've said just now is the fact that the fear of conflict,
Oh,
right?
yeah.
So many of us women keep quiet, not just because we are worried about rejection, but we are also worried about provoking a conflict. And,
Absolutely.
and we are also very, as we are worried about conflict, we are also very worried about how we are responding to conflict, which we tend to be worried about, are we being perceived as being too emotional? And
Yep,
sometimes it gets to us, we get emotional. But what I love about what you've shared is the fact that when you are self-aware, and just the fact that you love yourself means you are living and acting in accordance to your values at your
yes.
pace.
At my pace. And, I strongly believe we're in control of our time.
Yeah,
So there's 24 hours in a day,
yeah,
but we have to be in control of our time. And that means deciding, how do you want to wake up in the morning? What do you want to do to fulfill yourself? And,
yes,
by doing this, this helps you, again, follow your passion and your purpose in life. So
absolutely.
there are going to be moments where work is stressful, there are deliverables. You can't get away from that. But
Yeah,
how you choose your attitude towards your work,
right.
I think is so important.
And also, I think it's also so much about, I mean, they talk a lot about following your passion and loving what you do, but that's not always going to work out that way. There will
No,
always be components, even in your work life, that you don't like.
no,
And
absolutely.
you can choose to find those little bits that make you happy and
Yeah.
focus on that, right?
And it's those little bits, I think, that really make a difference to bringing you joy and for happiness and fulfillment at your work.
Right. Including your own achievements, like when you spoke up and that achievement you felt, right? So
Absolutely.
So now that we are talking about choices, right, and we talked about purpose and values, what I would love to know from you is how do you think, like, how do you think being intentional about self love, right, and making choices that are in accordance to our values, our purpose, and the identity we have chosen for ourselves
Yep.
is some how does that support us dealing with some of the challenges at work? When we talk about women, we have stuff like women don't speak up, women are waiting for someone to notice them, there's an imposter syndrome, there's an inner
Mm.
critic. So how does a self-love support you in tackling our inner critic or all these
Yeah.
challenges,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. I think let's start off by saying that this inner critic, a
Mm-hmm.
lovely term, it's there in
Yeah,
all of us.
yeah,
Uh, we have a choice to put the volume
Right.
of an inner critic at a high volume or a
Mm-hmm.
low volume.
Yeah.
And today, with COVID now, hopefully we're becoming, going from a pandemic to an endemic. We're still in that, situation where we're working from home, but there's
Mm-hmm.
well-being, and a lot of people are still struggling with it as well. It's not an easy journey, but
Right.
I think when you can't blame organizations or you
Mhm.
can't blame external people, we're very much used to blame, blame, blame.
Yeah.
And I think every time you point a finger at someone or something, point it back at yourself. And
Right.
that's
Right.
where, when you start to take control of self love, when you start to discover and unravel your true self,
Yes.
you can then see a difference in your environment. And that's
Yeah.
why when we talk about development, it's not development externally, it's development internally. It's a journey.
Yes.
And that's why I mentioned earlier, if you have someone like a coach or a mentor who can guide you through that and challenge you,
Yes.
when you do that, suddenly you will see everything in a different light. You will see
Yeah.
yourself being more joyful. You will
Yeah.
see yourself being more productive. You will
Yeah.
see yourself having more of a balance. And I
Yes.
think that is where you're in rhythm with the universe, if I may say that.
Of
Uh,
course.
that there is a circadian rhythm there. How do we
Right.
tap into that? And it's really about not feeling guilty or worried or regret about anything. And truly, every morning,
Yes.
I would say starting your day being full of gratitude,
Yeah. Yes.
being able to breathe, being able to be healthy, being able to make a difference in one's life. That's fantastic.
Right. I like what you're saying because this is something that has come up over and over again in one of the conversations that you cannot hide behind this thought process that I have no time. You
Yeah.
have to make that time for yourself. And that's a very fundamental aspect of self love that you create time and space for
Yeah.
yourself in your own life, right?
Well, think about it. When we say we don't have time, let's say if you've got a work call and your child calls up, you say, sorry, I'm too busy. I can't take the call.
Yeah.
But if your child said, I'm in emergency, I
Yeah.
need you,
Yeah.
you would go there straight away.
Right.
So we do have time. And
Yeah.
actually, I think there's an abundance of time. It's just how we use it
Yeah.
to nourish our energy,
Yeah.
to nourish ourselves. And that's why even something as simple as sleep is so
Yeah.
important to
Yeah.
give our bodies that rest so we wake up energized.
Yeah.
So we can, focus on what truly matters in our life. I think it's not just what the organization wants. It's the organization, your home, your family, everything in your environment.
Absolutely. And they're all interlinked. There is a linkage.
Everything is interlinked. Yeah,
The fact of it is you're the common element in all of it, whether it's your home, whether it's your friends, whether it is your
yeah,
volunteering or your hobbies or your work, you're the common element. And if you have
exactly,
to strike a balance, you have to be very clear about what you want, what works for you, and you have to be compassionate to yourself as you do
totally.
it together, right?
It's very easy to be compassionate to others, like you said, but if we start forgetting about ourselves, you'll soon feel it. And like you said, there are some times where family may be more of a priority. There may be
Yeah,
times when work is more of a priority. There may
yeah,
be times when you're a priority, but at a consistent level, how are you being selfish? And I think
yeah.
that's we're conditioned not to be selfish. I
Yes,
think we should
yes,
be selfish as
yes.
long as we are compassionate to others and show integrity. We should be selfish.
I love the fact that you're calling out this whole perception about selfish as being a bad thing because it
Yeah,
really shows us as women how much we tend to label things as
yeah,
good and bad, as
yeah,
desirable and non-desirable. And who says it any
absolutely.
which way?
Yeah,
You know,
yeah,
you decide what's right or wrong for you. There's no good or bad.
exactly. Absolutely. So when you hear this word, it's funny how words have a thing: conflict, selfish.
Yes,
These are triggers which, set us off in that. But if we can reset our mind and say, today, I'm going to be a little bit selfish to myself. Does it impact anyone else? No. Do I need permission from anyone else? No.
Yeah.
How do you feel after it? Brilliant.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I think that's where the self-worth component of self-love comes in, because
Yes. Yeah.
you have to believe, like if you don't believe you're worth it,
Absolutely. Yeah.
nobody is going to give that to you. So
No.
I'm going to jump into the next one, which is, what according to you, we've discussed how can you tackle work-life balance, all of that, right? But when women at work are intentional about self-love, right? What according to you are the biggest wins that they get? What have you noticed? What have you observed in your programs with women? How do women win? What are the two, three big wins that women show in the performance of their work or as leaders
Sure.
because they love themselves?
Yeah, no, great. I think a couple of things. One, I would say that inner confidence, that inner spark that
Mm,
they have, which
yeah,
allows them to
yeah,
speak up, which
yeah,
allows them to take risks.
yeah,
And I think also it's about their productivity and how women are able to show that they can progress in their career,
yeah,
but they can also have a family as well.
yeah,
Um, I think for women as well, being in charge of their emotions. We talked about this earlier. I think being in charge of their emotions. So if someone has a breakdown, that doesn't mean they're weak. Maybe
yeah,
that's just how they're expressing themselves. So
yeah,
creating an environment where people feel very safe to express their emotions. And then I
mm,
think thirdly, it's also about allowing, dance to your own tune, not the company's tune. Be
yeah,
in charge of your own time. So own your agency. Yeah, you
absolutely.
make the decisions of your life, your career, your work. And I think if we can encourage so many more women leaders
Yeah,
to go on that journey of self love, self worth, self respect, they will just see the difference within themselves. And
yeah.
as women being nurturers, they will also spread that to their teams, to their clients, and to the
Yes,
larger organization as well.
yes. I think that's a very important point you make, because over the past 2 years, we've seen a shift in the way leadership is perceived. And
Yeah.
where once upon a time we talked about traditional hard power, today the focus is so much on soft power and hard power together.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, you could tell us a little bit more about it, because you've experienced it and you've actually created programs to support that transition. Tell us a bit more about how this serves women in the emerging workspaces of today.
Yeah. And I think when we talk about programs, it's not that, I mean, most people in a company will attend a training
Yeah,
and probably 24 hours later, they would have forgotten 80%. And that's actually statistically proven.
yeah,
But I think where I'm coming from is creating whether it's a 6-month journey or a 10-month journey,
yeah,
and saying, you do this at your own pace and in your own time. Yeah.
yeah,
And looking inwardly first. So being self aware,
yeah,
discovering your purpose. How do you how do you be resilient? And how do you do all this
yeah,
while being aligned authentically?
yeah,
And I think there's some great content that we have put together. There are also coaches who support people along the way. Because I think in any journey, you need that support. You need to also celebrate those small milestones.
yeah,
And through a 10 or 6-month journey, you do go through change, but it's not a quick change.
yeah,
So when we talk about transformation, it's not that you transformed in a month. I think something is wrong there. You have to go deeper. And the intent of the programs is, we're starting you on this journey.
yeah.
And then when you get to another level, right, you have your foundation, let's take you another step. And then
Absolutely.
how do you pay it forward to future women leaders as well? Because I think as you go through something and you find it inspirational, how can you teach others about it or help others to go through that journey as well?
Absolutely. Something you say here is, it resonates very deeply with me, which is the fact that a lot of women shy away from making investments in their
Yes.
own growth and in their own development. I see I see it so often. Like I would say, on an average of a month, I have at least a couple of women who are reaching out to me with some challenge.
Yeah,
And it's so obvious to me that they either need a coach or they need
yeah,
a therapist.
yeah,
And
yeah,
I can see the resistance when the suggestion is made to them,
yeah,
or or a thought process that no, this is so expensive, and it
yeah.
always baffles me that you would think that you're not worth that small amount of money.
Absolutely. And it's so true. I think investing in yourself
Yeah.
is the best thing you can do. And it's sort of looking at it as a long-term investment.
Yes. Yes. Yes.
That's it. And whether it is, and learning can be done every day and in
Yes.
small doses. You can watch a TED talk, listen to a podcast, read
Right.
an article, whatever it
Right.
is. If you go for a walk, you don't have to, you can multitask. So I think, how
No.
do you break down that learning? And if you look, sports people have coaches.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Famous professors all coach people. So I think today, I think it's about being proud and saying, yes, I have a coach who helps
Yes.
me, puts me in the
Right.
right direction. And if you look at coaches, coaches themselves have a community, a circle that supports them.
Absolutely. Yeah, I know. I mean, I know for a fact that I have at least 4 or 5 mentors who I talk to almost every
Uh,
month just to
Absolutely.
get myself on track, right?
Of course.
So,
Of course.
so of course, we are talking about coaching, but supposing someone is listening to this conversation and wants to start creating a routine, which
Right.
will help her intentionally practice self-love at work, right?
Yeah.
What suggestions would you offer so that she can start a journey
Yeah.
and see the benefits of it for herself in the long term?
I think you hit that word, routine. I think routine, I'm going to add another word, discipline. So I think waking up in the morning, what's the first thing people do?
Yeah,
Check their work emails or check their WhatsApp messages or whatever. But I think one, just lying in bed and just breathing for a couple of minutes, just
yeah,
pause.
yeah.
Number two, I would say having gratitude. What are you grateful for?
Hmm.
You know? And then three, I would set time and say, if my day is going to be great, what do I need to do?
Yeah,
Yeah. And make a decision that today is going to be a great day. Now, you may have lots of meetings, you may have lots of different calls, but if you mentally decide today's going to be a great day, it sets your mind up.
right,
And then you put yourself into that rhythm.
right.
And I would say, if you can, do some exercise.
Hmm.
20 minutes, go for a walk, do some yoga, loosen up your body a little bit. So if you can work on your mind and your body first thing in the morning,
Yeah,
then it sets you in a lovely even keel for the rest of the day. And I do this every day. It's being
right.
mindful of what it is to nourish your mind, your body, and your soul.
Absolutely. If I may say so, something that works for me, and I know this works for you also, and I'm going back to that point you made about when you had that conflict at work and you pulled back, right?
Yeah,
I think what you raised there was a very critical thing to integrate as a routine for us, that every time we feel agitated, right?
yeah,
Every time we move away from our values,
yeah,
or we have a sense that we are in a situation that doesn't align with who we are as people or our purpose or our vision,
yeah,
uh, we feel the discomfort at a physical, at a body level, and at an emotional
absolutely.
level. We do,
Correct.
right? And the mind is then justifying it. But I
Yeah,
think what really stood out for me in that episode, in that instance you shared, was how you took time out.
yeah,
You know,
yeah.
I mean, if somebody was hurt or sad, if your best friend called you up tomorrow morning and said, "Hey, I'm so upset," what would you do? You
Mm,
would sit with that person and listen,
yeah,
and then you would offer that person compassion and love and say, "It's okay, it's going to get better. How can I help?" Right?
yeah,
We have to, I believe we have to also very intentionally create that routine for ourselves. And every time I'm upset or I'm angsty or wobbly, as we call it, uh, you know, take that time out and give yourself a love break.
give yourself permission to first acknowledge, where is that? Is it in your stomach? It is in your throat?
Yes,
Acknowledge it.
yes,
Next thing is just, it's there. You can give it a name if you want. You can call it Auntie Doubt or Uncle Fear. Give it funny names if you want. So
Yeah.
it's real, it's there. And then what do you need to do to just calm it down? Maybe
Yeah.
you want to go for a walk, maybe writing it down in a journal.
Yeah. Yeah.
That also helps. Maybe you want to make a cup of tea. Maybe you want to speak to a friend who cheers you up. But it's a mindset that you've got yourself in. You've reacted to something.
Yeah.
But because it's in your mind, you can also change your mind as well.
Absolutely.
Now, I know that sounds very easy, but sometimes we get very hurt by what someone says. We can brush it off, or it stays with us for days, weeks, sometimes months, or even years.
Yeah.
But again, that's also understanding what is in your control. And as human beings, we have that capacity to say, sorry, not interested, not going to entertain what you're saying today. Finish, irrespective of the relationship. It could be an elder, a person, it could be someone you admire, but respectfully,
In alignment with your values, I would
in
say. Because
alignment with your values and what works for you. Absolutely.
yeah, and to work to respond in alignment with your values, you have to give yourself that little break, right?
You need that space. Yeah. Pause and then choose the way you want to respond and see what the outcome is.
So something else that struck me was, and I think we kind of, both of us have seen this in the positive psychology course that we both did, was even if you do react, even
Yeah.
if you behaved in a way you're not happy about, one of the things that you can actually do is again take that pause and re-visualize it, and
Absolutely.
so that you're wiring your brain to do it differently the next time, instead of beating yourself and saying, oh, I'm a failure, I'm never going to get this.
Absolutely. That self-talk that we have, which is can be quite intoxicating. It's okay. We are works in progress. And this kind of change takes years and years.
It
And
does.
you have to keep working at it. And you will fall down and you will make mistakes. But
Yeah.
as long as you're honest with yourself, as long as you're intentional of, is this how I want to respond? Because we are the creators of our life, right?
Hmm.
We shouldn't be dictated by the external, but yet we
Yeah.
give our power away each and every time. If you give your power away, bring it back.
Absolutely. I think I love the fact that you say, if it happens, bring it back, because you can
Yeah.
always, that's the whole thing about being intentional and choosing, right?
Yes. Yeah. You get the power and you can say, okay, I made a mistake. Big deal. Move on. What's the lesson I've learned? Move on.
Absolutely. I really, when I'm listening to you, it almost strikes me that in the beginning of the conversation, you talked about the power that women have. And really, when I listen to you now, I think what stands out for me is the fact that the power is the power to choose to be the
Yes.
person that you know you're inside, the power to
Very
choose
much.
to live in accordance to the values that make you feel okay in your body, mind, emotions, and in your spirit, right?
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And you know what? Our bodies are perfect machines. So
Yeah.
when it's out of alignment, it will tell you. But we choose to ignore those emotions. We
Yes.
choose to ignore the way our body feels. So absolutely, it's the power of everything that's within our control.
Lovely, lovely. So, Pearl, I think we're kind of coming to the end of the conversation. Do you have any?
Already?
Well, you want to keep talking, we'll talk. But any last words that came up for you as we were speaking? Because, like I said, this is a new topic. I don't think many people are talking about this. I
Yeah.
think this is something we have to talk about, but not as go do a yoga session or go meditate, but really in the context of taking time for yourself and helping yourself build your self-esteem, build your self-worth with a lot of
Yeah.
self-awareness. So, any last words before we wrap up for the evening?
I would say to anyone who's listening, go out there, go a bit deeper, put yourself out of your comfort zone.
Yeah.
Be curious, explore, meet new people, travel to a different destination, and see what comes up. Just see what comes up, and don't be fearful of what people might think. That's their job, probably, to criticize you. That's all right. That's okay. Explore maybe the idea of taking a course, maybe for a weekend, or listen to a podcast. And I think this idea of self love, don't focus too much on the words. I think it's more about experiencing it for yourself. So if
Yeah.
something's not working for you, figure out why it's not working. It's not usually the external, it's something within you. So I would say go out there, have fun, explore, get out of your comfort zone, and make 2022 the best year ever for yourself.
Words of wisdom, real words of wisdom here. Thank you so much for that. And just for everybody who's listening to us right now and will listen to this video, this broadcast later on, Pearl is available on LinkedIn. She regularly writes about wellness, mindfulness, self esteem, self worth, women's leadership, and a bunch of topics. She shares wisdom that is very relevant to us. I think you're on Instagram and Facebook, although I'm
Yeah,
not sure how active you are. So, but
more on
she's
LinkedIn.
yeah, she's more on LinkedIn. So she is there. She writes. She is somebody. I mean, she works. She's practically building our learning wing, our learning vertical at Dragonflies Everywhere, and she's building a fantastic coaching program that's global in its nature. So what I'm trying to get at is she's an amazing person who's always there to help, to share her wisdom. Do look her up, do check out her content, do connect with her, and let that journey evolve, because we can always do with one more cheerleader in our corner.
For
Thank you
sure.
very Thank you very much, Pearl, for joining us. I'm really grateful that you're here to discuss this.
Thank you. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Thank you, everybody who is been listening to us, who's been watching this, and who will watch us in the next few days. We're very grateful as always, and we will be back again next Friday at 7 p.m. India for yet another conversation. And this time we will again be talking about self-love, but we will do a more of a deep dive into why self-love is important, because unless you love yourself with lesser conditions, we cannot offer love to other people. We cannot really offer unconditional, empowering, enabling kind of love to other people. So do join us for that conversation. I promise you that's going to be another fantastic one. Take care, have a great weekend, and I'll see you next week.